Right, if you could be comfortable.
Okay, you are live.
Okay, we call this meeting of the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors to order. If we could have roll call, please.
Supervisor Lewis,
Present.
Supervisor Day, Supervisor Ayers. Here. Supervisor McDaniel,
Here.
Chairman Lyons.
Here, we'll have an invocation followed by the pledge. Heavenly Father, we ask that you bless all of us today, and in particular our farmers on National Farmers Day. We ask you to give us the wisdom to make the right decision. Yes, all these things in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Some special announcements per the Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Executive Order 72. Persons who have been fully vaccinated for the COVID-19 virus are not required to wear a mask. We'll hold citizen comments near the beginning of the meeting. We'll do our best to take citizens' comments remotely. There are two options for citizens to offer comment. The first one is to join by telephone. You may dial in one of the numbers listed on the county website. Webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press the raise your hand button on the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you're calling in by phone. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Recognitions and presentation, Mr. Suter.
Yes, Dr. Laura Cornegay is here this evening to present some certificates of appreciation to some deserving staff.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you guys for giving me a couple of minutes of your time. At this point in our global pandemic, we really wanted to take the opportunity to thank Rockbridge County for partnership with public health to do all of the things that we've done in the last year and a half. It's been a really Herculean task that we never could have accomplished by ourselves. Since March of 2020, we've had over 36,000 cases of COVID within Central Shenandoah Health District. Those have all been investigated and contact tracing has been done. We've had 1,400 hospitalizations and unfortunately 597 deaths. We've delivered 60,256 vaccines through public health channels throughout the district, and that was in collaboration with a lot of our community partners like Rockbridge County, and 174,449 vaccines through all channels within the health district. So a lot of work that's been done to try to combat this global pandemic. And as I said, it was really a team effort. We appreciate everything that the county has done to support our public health efforts, but there are a few folks who we saw day in and day out, talked to day in and day out, who were definitely deserving of individual recognition. So I'd like to take this opportunity to present a certificate of appreciation to Kevin Moore. And I saw him out here. Thank you so much for all of your work day in and day out. You saved countless lives and were a tremendous part of our public health team. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We'd next like to present our certificate of appreciation to Nathan Ramsey. Likewise has been an incredible public health partner. I don't know how we could have done it without you, and thank you so much for all of your efforts. Thank you. And finally, to Courtney Freeland, a certificate of appreciation. Courtney worked tirelessly behind the scenes and as a EMS vaccinator, and we greatly appreciate everything that you've done to protect public health in our district. So thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
While we're setting up the picture, I also personally like to thank Dr. Day, her team. I don't think we made it, I know we would make it. She was on more meetings than you can possibly imagine. I see her at meetings one place, and then I see her on Zoom, and then a conference call, and this is for 10 different localities, right, in the health district. So she deserves a lot of thanks.
Thank you very much.
Usually we do it right up there.
No chief. Dr. Moore.
Photo bomb.
No, I don't want to vote.
All right, everybody.
Let me know if I'm in this.
No, this is perfect. I'm gonna do one like that. Turn the flash on. It didn't flash, but that's okay. Thank you all very much.
Fire Prevention Week proclamation.
Proclamation expressing the appreciation of the Board of Supervisors of Rockbridge County to local fire agencies and firefighters. Whereas the President of the United States traditionally designates the week in which the date of October 9 falls as National Fire Prevention Week. And whereas the men and women of the fire agencies serving Rockbridge County, the city of Lexington, and the city of Buena Vista provide a vital public service by responding to the fire suppression, hazardous materials incidents, technical and water rescue needs of our residents and visitors. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand that fighting fires is one of the most hazardous professions, requiring physical strength, determination, and courage. And whereas safety of our citizens is the primary goal of local, state, and national government. And whereas firefighters are often among the first to arrive upon the scene of emergencies and disasters, be they medical, natural, or man-made, to provide immediate and often life-saving assistance. And whereas firefighters participate in numerous hours of rigorous training and continuing education in order to enhance their life and property-saving skills. And whereas our firefighters have demonstrated a high level of commitment and dedication to their communities and fellow citizens by providing constant care and service during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, therefore, we, the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors, recognize the week of October 3rd through 9th, 2021 as National Fire Prevention Week, during which all our residents may join in celebrating the dedication of our local fire departments and firefighters, past and present, and their families whose support allows them to serve our community.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the proclamation?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
A second. Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes,
And the chair votes yes.
And Chief Ramsey and crew had to go, he headed over to the high school for another engagement, had to leave. So I will make sure they get that and distribute a copy to each of our local fire departments.
Time for citizen comments. Is there anyone signed up to speak? Okay. Is there anyone online who wishes to speak?
No, sir.
All right. Were there any comments received electronically?
No, sir.
Okay. Move on to the approval of the September 27, 2021 minutes. Are there any recommended changes to the draft of the minutes?
Motion to approve as presented.
A motion to approve. Do we have a second?
second,
And a second. Any discussion? Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
yes,
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. And for those that might be wondering, the draft minutes from September 16th with the joint board meeting with the school board and the multi-jurisdictional meeting on September 20th will be on our next agenda. County financial package, Mr. Bolster.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For anybody that has noticed it, we did not upload the financial package until today, so the board has hard copies. If anybody wants hard copies of the financial package, it's here. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and transition to the memorandum that's in your financial package. I'll just go ahead and read through the activities of the month, starting with the Commissioner of the Revenues. There's 8 items listed. The first one is working on adjustments to personal property counts for the 21 personal property tax. Number 2, preparing the 2021 supplemental tax book for personal property and real estate. Working land use revalidations for calendar year 2022. In addition, starting to prep the tax forms for calendar year 2022 as well. He is preparing the 2021 Public Service Corporation tax book to be presented to our treasurer, Ms. Betty Travato. And then updating any change of addresses for second half real estate billing. And then it continues to assist Wingate with the general reassessment. And lastly, preparing changes in the way we assess, collect transit occupancy tax. And that's more in reference to what was discussed last time with the changes regarding the VRBO. Can't recall what the other main platform is.
Airbnb.
Airbnb. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Is there an update there or?
I don't have an update.
They're still working through at the state level where the Commissioners Association is working to determine what the best course of action would be, what the recommendations would be.
Okay, transitioning to Ms. Travato's activities for the month. 7 items are listed. State auditors were on site to conduct an audit of state files and the share fees. They were here September 8th and 9th. They received letters stating the treasurer has completed, has complied with state laws and all is in good standing. The second item, collections for personal property tax continue. Mail postmarked prior to October 5th, 2021. We did have our external auditors requested that we do reschedule our final field work. They were supposed to be here last week. Unfortunately, they have been hit with COVID-19 in their offices, and that caused them to have to push some things out. So they'll be coming in 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks after that, so early November. Item 4, beginning work at month end on delinquent notices for personal property tax. Preparing delinquent real estate files to send to the taxing authority consulting service attorney for collection. And then end of month preparation for the real estate billing. So those, once they go out, they'll be due December 5th. And then lastly, there is a delinquent real estate auction that is scheduled for Tuesday, October 6th, 26th at 11 o'clock in the circuit courtroom. If there's no questions, we'll go ahead and transition to the line chart in your financial package. You can see by taking a look at it, things are fairly consistent with the previous 3 years data. I'll just mention a couple things. At this point, we were anticipating to be $5,149,912 in expenditures over revenues year to date. At this point through September, we were $3,660,813. So that's a combination of our revenues are 707,700 higher than what is projected, again, based on 3 years of data looking back. And our expenditures are 932,507 less than what we anticipated. So the combination of those two have us outperforming what was anticipated. If there's no
Do we
question,
know what's driving that increase of revenues?
a couple things stood out to me. The sales and the meals and the lodging are all outpacing last year's collection levels. Some of that has to do with the pandemic last year. Of course, the board did also approve increases to sales and lodging effective in August. So that does have a little bit of influence on those numbers.
But how does that compare to 2019? Because what's it, fiscal year 21 that we cut 30% of revenues anticipation for the
Right.
pandemic?
So Supervisor McDaniel, I don't have that data right here at this moment, but I can certainly look it up and email it to you all.
Steve, could you,
just think it's important to note that one particular year from March 20 through, so say now, I mean, we've been dealing with the pandemic and the cuts that we made to adjust our budget to. So we may be getting back to somewhat normal, but how does that really compare to what
Looking back
normal
to
was?
2019.
is it possible you can correct for the additional taxes or just give us the gross sale? I mean, can you just do the lodging sales so that we know whether we're on pace for 2019?
Absolutely. yeah.
Okay,
I can adjust for that.
thank you.
The other thing too, I'll note is when building this budget, while adjusting for the trending that we were seeing at the tail end of last fiscal year that was trending better than we anticipated, we still remain conservative in our estimates to on revenues. So we remain conservative, but we'd rather remain conservative and then be able to adjust it later.
If there's no other questions on the line chart, we'll go ahead and transition to the action items in the memo. And so there's a consideration of the Holes Drive-In funding request. I'm sure you all are aware there was a capital campaign that started back in March. And so the goal was to raise $350,000 to purchase the land that the drive-in theater currently leases. And so I've got some data, but it's rather old. So I just happened to look up online. According to the Augusta Free Press, as of December 31st, they had raised 280,000. So they were about 80+% towards their goal at that time. I did speak with Mr. Suter, so I don't know if you want to expand on the current status.
I don't know exact. I did talk with, frankly, I talked with Ed Smith today because I couldn't get Matt Paxton, and I asked if he knew, and he said he did know that they closed last week on the property. They still have to pay the Cornerstone Bank for the Cornerstone provided the gap that they needed for the cash to make the purchase, and that they're still trying to raise funds. I hadn't seen the report on the amount that they've raised so far reportedly. So
I spoke with Mr. Paxton, and they are still raising, the total amount has not been reached.
So according to their website, it's 312,705 is what it looks like they're at least according to their website. So the Finance Committee looked at this a couple times over the last month. And so the recommendation from the Finance Committee is for the board to consider funding up to $30,000 towards this capital campaign. Of course, this is one-time funding, and we would account for it. The recommendation is to account for it under the Economic Development Department. So if the board is in agreement with a number that's up to 30,000, what I can do at the next meeting is bring an appropriation resolution in that amount to the board for them to approve.
Do we know about the other localities? Are they contributing?
I checked back in today. I haven't heard back from Mr. Hallett, but he was of the indication that he thought there was going to be some support on City Council in Lexington. Jason Tyree reiterated today that he did not think there was going to be support. They asked for a lesser amount. I believe the number was 12,500 from each of the cities and 50,000 from the county. And I'm not sure what the basis was, but it works out fairly closely on a per capita basis as far as that ratio. So Lexington will still be considering it, to my understanding, but it does not appear that Buena Vista, according to reports that I have at this time, are considering doing that.
I just spoke with Jim upstairs when we were trying to figure out the MSA meeting, and he affirmed today that was the direction he felt they were going, although it's not final. And I do know conversations are still being had with Univista.
Yeah, that's just the latest
I understand.
information.
Yeah.
They're about 38,000 short right now.
That's the different numbers than I had heard. So I'm not,
Could they come and give us a presentation? I'm surprised.
Well, they
I guess
could,
they submitted something to us.
yeah, they've submitted the request that I forwarded, and it's, they gave a pretty detailed request.
If the county contributes money to this, can we stipulate that if the property is ever sold or disposed of, that that money comes back to the county?
I'm not sure about that one.
Could have an agreement with them to that effect. Give some thought on how you would document that, probably record the agreement in the clerk's office, maybe,
As a lien or similar to a lien?
something like that.
I'm just thinking we're using taxpayers' money to fund this, and I have no problem with that, but later, if it's ever disposed of, that we would get that money back.
I agree. I'd like to see that, if that's doable.
We can certainly have that discussion with them and
And
bring you something back.
if the board disagrees with me, that's fine, but that's just,
Well, Ms. Huffman, since they are a nonprofit, they were ever to disband, or, I mean, the only reason you would sell the property if you dissolve the nonprofit organization, because that's the only thing they own. Wouldn't there be something in the, when you dissolve a nonprofit, you can't keep the money, you got to do something with it.
Maybe we could review that.
well,
It's required to go to other
Similar.
similar
Right.
nonprofits.
So-
Whatever proceeds are left.
So even indirectly, the money would be coming back to nonprofits, I would think, in the county.
It's not restricted to
Right.
county or even the state.
We've had this discussion, or I have, on other nonprofits dissolving. And frankly, it's my recollection of it in layman terms is that the money should be used to replace the service it was providing. But in this particular case, that's kind of hard to quantify. But in reality, the way the code reads, it just needs to go to ultimately to another nonprofit, and that could be basically any nonprofit nationwide was my understanding of it.
Well, I'm not sure if that is the land that it sits on, though. I mean, I would just feel great if Vicky could take a look at that and see if there is something. I know the property that they would have and maybe what's in their bank, but if it's sold, it might be developed. I mean, there's all kinds of things that could happen, and we are very happy it's not happening and that we have the drive-in. But I would, to Mr. Day's point, I would really like to see if that ever happened down the road. It would be nice to have the option of getting our money back, and returning it to the county. If we can always make a decision to donate it to the following nonprofit. But I'm not positive about those. I mean, can we review those? You're going to review those rules, and maybe there's a way to do that. Is that right? Something?
Well, I'm confident that if they were to dissolve, the requirement would be that their assets be distributed to other nonprofits. But in terms of an agreement to pay back the money that's donated to them, I just want to give some thought as to what would be the best way to secure that.
Okay. But I completely support the recommendation, but of the donation of the $30,000 or up to $30,000, but it's not clear that if that's the ask at this point. Am I getting that correct? It might
No,
be
the ask was 50.
the
The finance
50,
committee is recommending 30.
right, I understand that, but it looks like there might be only up to, now they only need 38 or their fundraising went. Do we know whether that's the case, or is the recommendation of the finance committee to make the $30,000 regardless of where they are in their fundraising?
Well, at the time it was recommended, the numbers were much farther apart.
Right.
So that's where we came to 30. I don't know, no offense to the folks down here looking at it, but yeah, I don't know what that is today. What I heard from Mr. Paxton was not that
Right.
very recently. So I'm
Can
not
we
sure.
say not to exceed?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But I guess what I'm saying is will the finance committee make that decision of what we are going to do, or will this come back to us and we will make a decision based on what? I guess is, what are we making the decision on? How much they need? Well, is that what we're making it on?
I think so, because you don't want to give them more than they need, and if the city's going to contribute, I think basically you check with, say, how much have you raised, and if it's $30,000 or less, we make the contribution.
Right, and the city might be contributing as well. I
Right.
just,
So,
right,
because if their
we can-
website,
Yeah, I think if you're to Ms. Ayers' question, if they need less, then I don't think the finance committee would be uncomfortable adjusting that. But if you're if we have approval to go, up to that,
to
as Mr.
30.
Boulder said, then
I get it.
we can-
Okay, and
we
then and you all will
Sure.
work that out.
Absolutely.
And either way, the appropriation resolution needs to be
Yeah,
brought
so
back
you
to the
will
board.
know the final number when that comes back. Official document.
so do we need to take action on this, Steve?
Whatever the pleasure of the board is, you certainly can. It would be beneficial in preparation for the next meeting.
Right,
to have a
that's
decision.
what I thought. So, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve up to $30,000 for Holes Drive-In and ask that our legal counsel looks into the idea of documenting that if the property is ever sold or changed, that the money could come back to the county.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll second that.
and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes,
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. The Lower Maury River Scenic River designation.
Sir, so there is no appropriation resolution per se, but it's just the approval of the bills. And so there's 506 invoices on the bills list. And so I've got some notes if there's any questions on anything in particular, but recommendation is to approve the payment of the bills for the month of October.
Any questions on the bills? Do we have a motion to approve payment?
So move.
Do we have a second? And a second. Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
yes,
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. Sorry for jumping the gun. Lower Maury River, Mr. Spencer.
Yes, in your package is a description of really the final step required in the process to bring the rest of the Maury River into Virginia Scenic River status. And to recap, back, I believe it was 2017, it was when it took effect, but the section of the James River in the county received that designation. And then later, the Upper Maury from the confluence of the Calf Pasture and Little Calf Pasture to Furs Mill Road Bridge was designated in 2018 or 2019. Since that time, the Scenic Maury Committee, a group of citizens along the Maury River that's championed the upper section, then worked on the lower section. They went through I think a fairly detailed process of trying to identify all the landowners along the property, contact them, provide information about that, contacted a lot of them individually, wrote letters, talked to businesses, and in an effort to develop support and also to answer any questions that anybody might have about that designation. And to recap, this designation would be now to extend the original designation from First Mill Road all the way down to Glasgow at the confluence with the James, making the entire Maury River a Virginia Scenic River. So at that group's request in June, the Board of Supervisors authorized me to request DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation, to officially, formally study that stretch of the river like they have the other two stretches of river. What they do is they do a historic study of structures close to the river. They do everything that they can in the office on paper. They look at comprehensive plans, et cetera. And then they do an actual float on the river that was completed in September. This is the first one I missed because I was in Colorado. I hated to miss that, but they floated the lower section. And part of it they did from the Riverwalk in Buena Vista, but they floated most of the river. And Lynn Crump with DCR, then there's a letter in your package from someone in her office. I can't think of right off the top of my head, but that denotes that the river does qualify. That section of river does qualify. So the next step is adoption of a resolution formally requesting our legislators to introduce legislation in next spring's General Assembly session for consideration by the full General Assembly to officially designate the remainder of that stretch or the remainder of the Maury River as a Virginia Scenic River. And the recommendation is to adopt the attached ordinance, which does just that, and direct me to send it to Senator Deeds and Delegate Campbell with a cover letter requesting such. I will note that since the river either passes through or adjacent to two other localities, the town of Glasgow, the city of Buena Vista, and the city of Lexington, that they are also in this process and their councils are considering similar, basically almost identical resolutions in the near future.
Any questions from Mr. Suter?
With the adoption of this, it doesn't restrict the land use for any property owner along the river, correct?
No, it does not. Matter of fact, I printed out what it does and what it doesn't do. Designations does not give the state control over land use. Designation carries with it no land use controls. Designation does not give the public any right to use privately owned land. And Virginia does not commercially promote its scenic rivers.
Did it say what it does do?
That list is much longer.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
And that I did provide a link for you all and the general public. And as I have every time we've done this and every time it's been brought before the board, I believe all of them have had that link to the Scenic River program and also specifically to this page, because that is the question that is most commonly asked.
No, that with the citizens I spoke with, that was their general concern.
Any other questions?
Make a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
We have a motion to approve
I'll second.
in a second. Any further discussion? Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and the chair votes yes.
I will send that on.
Funding priorities and budget schedules, Mr. Foster.
Yes, sir. So we have already started our FY 2023 budget cycle. And part of that process is to review the draft budget schedule and the funding priorities. Typically, these are formally adopted in the fall. So right now we're targeting the October 25th meeting. Included in your board docs package are the schedule and the funding priorities. And so these were adapted from the previous year and has been reviewed by the Finance Committee for presentation to the board. So I'll go ahead and start with the budget schedule. And as we've mentioned in the past, we basically work towards the end and then develop the schedule coming back towards the current. So right now we've got, we start off with November, and it's the joint board meeting that is anticipated. After that, we've got the consideration of the provisional adoption of the CIP for fiscal years 2023 and 2027. So we'll be providing an update to the board in November on that, and then an update, if necessary, in December. We also have a joint meeting with the school board scheduled for January, and then we get into February. So early February on the 2nd, we'll have a presentation by the external agencies, primarily the nonprofits. We'll give a presentation on their submissions for FY 2023. And in February 24, we'll do a presentation to the full board on the draft budget for 23. And then moving forward, we've got an update on the 14th, another school board meeting, a joint meeting with the school board in March. On the 28th, at a regular meeting, we have another update. And then on April 4th, we have a request to advertise the FY 23 budget, and then have a public hearing on the 18th of April, and then a budget adoption on the 25th. So most of these we try to get in line with the regular board schedule, but sometimes it's a challenge with trying to get the budget adopted on May 1st, which is in conjunction with the school division's budget. So if there's no questions on that, I'm ready to move on.
The only thing I would request is if nothing changes at the February 2nd meeting, that we let the people know that are presenting that our preference is to have them here in person rather than electronically. I should say my preference.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree.
Okay, with that, we have the funding priorities for FY 2023. It's a couple page document. I don't know if you want me to read through it, but I certainly can. Basically, the way I structure it is I try and give an outlook of what are some of the challenges that we are facing, or some of the recent news that has come out. I try and start at the national, then the state, then the local level. And then we, with that kind of framework in mind, we look at some of the challenges or opportunities that we have looking forward into FY 2023's fiscal year. Beyond that, the priorities really haven't changed much. Obviously, if there's a legal or moral obligation to any kind of debt service, that's something that we must do. Same with any kind of state mandates or existing contracts. The board has always looked at providing a safety net for our citizens. And then kind of in line with the mission, vision, values that were adopted in previous years, the focus on public education, public safety, health and welfare, and then also solid waste management. And then lastly, just to focus on a quality workforce. So a combination of compensation and benefits that allow us to recruit and retain quality personnel. With that, I can certainly read through any kind of highlights.
Well, can I ask a question? The two primary areas involve the recalculation of the local composite index on which the state support of local education is based, and the biennial evaluation of the Virginia retirement system. Can you explain how the retirement system has an effect on our?
Sure. Yeah. So in FY21 and FY22, that VRS rate remained the same. So every biennium, they do a reevaluation, they readjust it. So right now we're at, I believe it's at 15.52% of your compensation goes to VRS. So any kind of adjustment, whether it's up or down, could have an impact on it. So the prior year, I believe it was, or prior biennium, I think it was 12.69. So obviously going from 12.69 to 15.52% was a pretty significant impact on our budget. So something we can't control.
Right. Something they determine, the state determines. And so you're prepared that that number is going to change. You don't know how it's going to affect us.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Okay.
And same with the local composite index. We
And
don't know
when
what
will we know that particular one?
we usually find that out in February, sometimes March. It just depends on how quickly they get that done. When it
when it's in March and it doesn't go our way, it creates a scramble with the budget that we put together, because sometimes when it goes from 12 to 15%, and you figure out across all the staff that are under, not necessarily under the board's purview, but we're fiscal agent for, and we have to fund, i.e. constitutionals and that type of thing, that can have a big budgetary impact. And the LCI can have a very large budget impact too if it goes the wrong way.
So those are the two primary that it affects the schools. Okay.
But don't they give some indication, like in the governor's projected budget in the House and the Senate, they plug numbers in there?
They do, but
Not always accurate.
they're not always accurate.
But- I mean,
You got something to go
you
on.
got something to at least start with.
There any indications there now? With,
Oh, no,
again,
because
you
that
don't know.
doesn't
Right, it
come
doesn't happen.
start.
All right.
December, I think, is the earliest.
Okay. I'll stop talking. Thank you, Steve.
I just like to say some of the questions that you all were asking earlier, about sales revenues and that sort of thing. I think Steve does a really good job of describing in this document, and the finance committee looked at it. It's good work, and there's really more there than what it appears to be. But to build a budget, all those things are really looked at closely. So I just want to assure everyone that we're trying to project as best we can, conservatively, of course, but there's a lot of study and thought put into that.
And it should be everybody on this board and administration and all should be talking to our state representatives about the local composite index, because when you compare Rockbridge County to the 10 or 15 localities that have the same or near the same LCI, it's a major difference when you're compared to Harrisonburg, Virginia Beach, Richmond, different places like that, the amount of economic development that we have versus the other places, and having a similar LCI number is just outrageous. The state needs to take a look at that formula and adjust, and we've been asking for years for that, but haven't seen any progress with that. But anytime you're talking with a state representative, that should be one thing that's always brought up.
And I think Mr. McDaniel's referring to, we were serving on the school board together when we last started complaining about that, or first started, and one of our board members, Mr. Brooks, brought that forward, and we actually gave an idea of how to fix it. We weren't necessarily just complaining about it. So they've been hearing it for a while, but as Mr. McDaniel said, they haven't done anything about it. But it sure would be nice. Yeah, it would be a lot of help.
So if there's no other comments or questions, then if something comes up over the next week or so, if you want to provide feedback to Supervisors Lewis or McDaniel on any potential changes or edits, then let them know, and it'll filter back to us, and we'll adjust accordingly. Otherwise, I'll be coming back on the 25th with a request to adopt the schedule and the funding priorities for FY23.
Okay. Everybody good?
And I can, for anybody that doesn't have, and I know at least three members up here know it very well, but we can send out the local composite index and the listing of all localities to get a comparison. Because obviously the lower the number, the better.
I guess we can do it in our joint meeting, right? Doesn't Philip usually provide that for us in one of these meetings?
Yeah, but he won't have it any sooner than.
No, but I'm just saying in terms of, I don't think you necessarily have to. It seems like an annual thing so far. I've seen it twice. from
He
Philip
has
coming
a
out of Philip's.
document
Yes.
that would show the 20 or so localities neighboring us, and also the 20 localities that are the same LCI index or close to it. So he could provide that to us. It sticks, Rockbridge sticks out like a sore thumb when you look at that report and the local composite index.
I just pulled it up, and we're up in the mid 40s in Rockingham County, alphabetically right below us is in the mid-30s.
Do you know what their tax base in Rockingham County is?
It's listed on here, but it's
More.
a lot more. When you think tax base or what.
But it considers a lot of factors, and that's what.
Well, it
will
does.
hurt
And
us.
it also factors how much you, or your ability to tax your
Well,
constituents.
the
And
big
if they
thing is
feel like
land
there's a window
value.
there, they're gonna,
yeah,
land
land
values.
value is huge, and personal income is a huge
Personal
factor.
income gets us pretty hard.
And you have a lot of people, I don't know whether any of us are included, that are very wealthy
No.
that reside in Rockbridge County.
And not
And
just
that-
reside, but they calculate if you own land.
Right,
in Rockbridge
and
County,
own land.
non-resident.
So,
They do.
yes, so,
For a number of years, it's been 3 or 4 individuals that have skewed that number for Rockbridge County.
exactly.
And there is legislation out there. Part of the code is in certain counties with, and I can't quote you the number, but if a certain population or certain percentage of the population are non-resident owners, then they, if it's a high enough number, they don't use the non-residents to calculate. And you'll have some, and I'm just throwing something out there, maybe around Smith Mountain Lake or whatever, you have a high percentage of owners that are non-resident, that don't live there. There's some abatement to that, but we're not at that level.
Okay, we're good. Everyone had a chance to review the monthly staff reports. If so, we have a motion to approve.
I move we approve.
We have a second?
Second?
And a second. All right, Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question subsequent to the report, that looking at the fire and rescue, and, we're seeing that the EMT class is still being held at the high school, which is good. Is that where were they going to
That was
attend that or help
school
with
board.
that or?
School board, probably.
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, just wanted,
I just know Nathan texted me, he said, hey, I've got a bolt. We got to be out at the high school.
okay.
Are we good?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully it's not a fire. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right.
Okay.
Are there any other board comments? Any committee updates? I know tomorrow we'll be interviewing.
Can I have Mr. Chad Coffey give my committee report on RARO? Because Chad, would you just say
He's here. I don't put him on the
a
spot.
word or two about the RARO day that we had, Fall in Love with RARO? It was a huge success, and I want to thank our director for doing such a great job.
I can do that. Thank you. So on October the 2nd, we did the,
There you go.
is it not up? Okay. On October the 2nd, we did the Fall in Love with Railroad community event at Brubaker. Started at 11 o'clock, finished at 2. We had roughly, I was keeping count for the longest time of the number of kids. I didn't care necessarily for the adults as far as in our numbers, but we had roughly between 185 and 200 kids, the best I could keep up with. We had Lexington Police Department, Lexington Fire and Rescue were there contributing. We had VMI basketball team, men's basketball team showed up, and VMI baseball team was there as well. It was a pretty big success by our standards in the short time frame that we were able to put it together. Looking forward to some of the feedback that we were able to garner from that. There was some talk of doing one in the spring, so we're going to pursue that. I think we're going to look at it as a means of kicking off our registrations. So we do one in the fall to kick off winter registration. Our spring registration kind of starts when it's still pretty cold, February-ish. So we're looking at maybe kicking off our fall registration in May, which is when they usually do that. So we're thinking the time frame of that event will be in May. I'm looking to do something of that nature again in the spring. Currently, our winter registration process is taking place. There are quite a few registrations coming in daily. We put out a community survey that's on our website. We've updated our website, trying to make it a little more user-friendly, streamline some things in which the information that people can find. The survey has, we've had some response on our survey, I guess you would say. It was a little slow at first, but there's more and more coming in now. So we're basically processing that information, seeing how we can continue to improve.
Thank you very much.
You all have any questions or anything as it relates to RARO?
How is your fall sports programs, the numbers? For a number of years, I helped coach with RARO, and the numbers every year just dwindled and dwindled. I mean, at one time there was 8 youth football teams, pretty much per league. And the last year I was involved, there was only 3.
Currently, we have probably, if we just speak in numbers, our soccer numbers are very good. We have quite a few teams in soccer. Football numbers, we have 2 senior teams. We have one Lexington-based and one Buena Vista-based. The Lexington-based team comprises most of the county and Lexington City. There are some county residents or county participants on the Buena Vista team. Just Glasgow or Natural Bridge is closer for some of them, so they prefer to play in Buena Vista. So we have 2 senior teams, 2 junior teams. The way you break down our rookie would be about 2 teams, and our flag, I think there's 25 to 30 participants in our flag. Currently, we participate with Allegheny Football League in that. So our kids are traveling, our juniors and seniors are participating with Allegheny Football League. So they've been traveling there, they've been traveling here. Both have done very well. In our senior division, our Lexington team is second in the standings, and our Buena Vista team is first. So the good in that, just from not just the competition standpoint, the good in that is because our teams are at the top, we're going to be hosting the playoffs. So that's bringing Allegheny, Covington, Bath County residents to our area. So hopefully that's meals and gas things in our area.
One of the recommendations that most all the coaches had at the time, you do fall registration in the spring to push your schedule back so that fall registration can be done the first or second week of school in the fall, so that you can talk to kids more in the schools about coming out and trying out for the teams. There's a lot of kids in the spring don't know what they want to do in the fall. So that was always a recommendation from the coaches to get more participation and more players. Just throwing it out there
No,
for you.
it's well received. I kind of have the same concern. I think it gives us a solid, what the registration in the spring, in my understanding, what it does is it gives us a solid idea for numbers, particularly with football equipment, and what we're going to need, because that's a high cost. So if our numbers kind of jump through the roof in football and we need to be purchasing more helmets, more shoulder pads, we have the time to do that. I would throw out currently, my plan would be to offer that registration in the spring. That gives us a good ballpark idea of numbers. But we have talked in office about opening the registration back up prior to whenever practices would start in the fall. And I came in about that time is when I started in August. And I felt like we did have kind of a short window there that we could re-advertise, so to speak, and try to draw some kids maybe that missed the spring or forgot about it. I think it is important, though, to do the spring one just to give us an idea of numbers.
And the last question I have, I know the winter sports registration is going on now through the 22nd.
Yes, sir.
How do you plan on handling the winter sports with COVID? Will the players have to wear a mask? And
We will follow, because we're tied to the school system in that nature, because we do not currently have any of our own gyms or facilities. So we'll have to follow whatever the school guidelines are, whether coming from the county schools, Lexington City Schools, or Buena Vista City Schools. The guidance that we're receiving from them right now is the players will not have to wear masks if they're out of the game. Anybody that's not currently actively participating should have a mask on. Obviously, kid just came out. He's tired. He's trying to catch his breath. Give him a minute, but fans, coaches, support staff, anybody there, as the current advisements are, will be under COVID protocol with a mask. So that will ebb and flow, I guess you would say, as the schools make their decisions.
Yeah, I think if, as much as you can spread the word about that, because I've heard several parents concerned about that.
And I think we've gotten several phone calls in the last week, really since registration opened up, with those same concerns. Some of them are going off of protocols over the last year when they had the clinics and the camps, and that's what they knew then. We're in a little different spot at the moment, but we'll do the best we can to get that information out there. We're trying to, one of the biggest things was market and advertise. So we're trying to push the information in as many different formats as possible. You will probably notice, I think starting tomorrow on the radio, there'll be an advertisement about our registrations running. And that's going to run pretty much until it closes next week. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tomorrow, we're scheduled to interview architects. Is that still on?
Yes.
For the social
That's
services?
social services.
Yeah, just to let you know that process is moving along. Any other announcements or committee reports? Okay. Do we have someone to read the motion to go into closed session?
Move that the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors convene in closed session to discuss the following. As permitted by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1, a personnel matter involving economic development director applications for discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We
All righty.
Are we started back? We need a motion to certify.
I move that the board certify that enclosed meeting just concluded to the best of each member's knowledge. Nothing was heard, discussed, or considered except the matter or matters specifically identified in the motion to convene in closed session and lawfully permitted to be discussed as exempt from open meeting requirements under provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in the motion.
All right. Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and the chair votes yes. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, Ms. McDaniel,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
And chair votes